All right, and welcome back again to the Paisan Sports podcast presented by, I was about to say Elevation 5280 Sports, but I caught myself. Presented by Recliner Media. Dante DePlacido, joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I've got to ask, what's the deal with beanies? Is it a beanie? Is it a hat? Is it its own thing? Or is it a hat? What's going on? I guess Zach is busy chewing on his banana. So just to provide some context there, not contacts. Before we went live, I noticed Zach's beanie, and I said, "Was that Delaware Bluecoats hat?" Because it looked like a Delaware Bluecoats beanie for a second. And he's like, "First of all, it's not a hat; it's a beanie." And I'm like, "A beanie is a hat, you moron!" And this has sparked a debate now. I mean, I've looked it up. According to Google AI, it says a beanie is a type of hat, which is what I say. And then even on Wikipedia, it says a beanie is a type of cap, and a cap is a hat. Ergo, beanie is a hat. Argo, Ben Affleck. Why didn't you? We had so much time before we started. You could have ate your banana at any point. You decided until we went live to start eating it?
Dude, why are you interrupting me?
Interrupting you? You're not saying anything. You're just eating a banana.
I walked past my kitchen earlier today, and I thought to myself, Dante always tries to do this glasses thing where he slams his glasses on the ground. I don't know if it catches it within like the rendering period of us going live with the stream key to YouTube and Facebook or not. But I passed my kitchen and I saw some bananas, and I was like, imagine if I just whip out a banana during his What's the Deal segment. And I even gave you a little hint that right before I asked you if you had your segment ready, and you said yeah, and I said that might change. So I thought you didn't see me. The thing was, I wanted to
busy explaining to somebody how.
Listen, here's the explanation here. Here's where I think things went wrong for me, because I had this background up because the room that I'm in doesn't have curtains at the moment, so there's a lot of white balance going on in the room, so I had to put the background in the logo. You didn't see me like with the background being up. I don't think you saw me undo the banana in the beginning and take the first bite. I think you saw the second bite, but you didn't see the first bite, so I was going to see how long it took you to react. But I actually ate that banana in less than a minute and 30 seconds. I saw it on the timer. It was like 1:29.
So okay, well, that's nothing. That's nothing, because before I got on, I ate a 7-patty burger from McDonald's in 2 minutes and 12 seconds.
7 patty?
7 patty. It started in the group chat with my brothers last night, where my brother shared a post from like Facebook where it was like a high protein alternative to a McDonald's meal. You just get a burger but have 7 patties in it. And he said something like Dante could probably do it. And I said, challenge accepted. So today I went to McDonald's. I got a 7-patty burger. And then I wanted to film myself eating it, but I wanted to fit it all in one video that I could send through text. So I did a speed run, and I ate it in 2 minutes, 12 seconds.
Like all 7 patties on one burger, or all 7 patties on one set of buns?
Yeah, I can send you. I'm going to send you the video now.
I don't know if I want to see the video is the problem.
You're going to see the video.
But speaking of that, Dante, that's a perfect segue. We were actually going to talk about this at the very end of the podcast, but he already mentioned his name, Paddy Pimblett.
UFC 324 reaction. Perfect segue. I like it, man. I like it.
Talk about a segue here. UFC 324. You were texting me. I also have another surprise for you, Dante. I interrupted your segment in the beginning, and then you texted me something, so I wanted to troll you. I don't know if you had money on it, but you know I'm the money man with the UFC, and I'm literally hitting on every single card. So I just kind of wanted to rub it in your face because it seemed like you were Saudi and had money in that situation. I actually wore my Sugar Sean O'Malley shirt today because you told me he didn't win that fight. And I think if we polled everybody watching this podcast, they would.
No, Song got robbed. Song got robbed. I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying the same thing. Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, they're all Sean O'Malley haters, and I'm not even a Sean O'Malley big fan. I actually bought this merch.
I
do like Sean O'Malley as a fighter.
No, I don't watch the UFC, so I have zero bias towards Sean O'Malley.
I know, but he's like a household name outside of just being a casual UFC watcher, even if you don't really watch the UFC. But I like his fighting style because obviously everybody likes people that just stand on the feet and strike. But I bought this because he actually made me a bunch of money on one of my UFC bets when he won the title, and he was a big underdog versus Aljamain Sterling. But it was a good fight. They stood on the feet. He landed that crazy knee in the third round with a elbow, I think, like right after. So he did do some work at the end of the fight. I did give Song one of the rounds, but and Sean's very open and transparent about his fights, and he even said that he gave a round two, but he didn't lose two rounds.
I think Song won round 3 in my opinion.
No, I disagree. If you watch the fight back in the moment, it's different, and especially if there's dialogue with people that you're watching it with. But when you go back and watch the fight, sometimes they play out differently. But the main event was also crazy. You said you're a casual UFC watcher, like even maybe.
I would say I watch UFC maybe 3 times a year.
I actually was going to say you probably watch that max 4 times a year, depending on who's fighting and like the names that are involved. You have some.
Well, it's not really depending on who's fighting. It's just depending on if my buddies are like, "Hey, let's go out to watch the UFC fights," and I'll be like, "Sure, I'm down." And I would say that happens about 3 times a year, maybe 4. However, with the move now to the fights being streamed,
I was just about to mention that.
Yeah, I might watch it more now.
What I was about to say is the days of like watching UFC out and having to do it in that fashion actually might be numbered because the numbered events are now Paramount Plus, and all you need is just the essential. Even though a lot of people on the Twitter realm, I don't know if you also saw when you were looking at the Sean O'Malley criticism, you saw that people were complaining about the amount of ads on there, but I'll take it over paying $75 to $85 for the pay-per-view.
Well, the one thing I did see about that, because UFC and WWE are owned by the same company, I'm pretty sure TKO.
Yeah, TKO,
Yeah, TKO also owns the UFC, and the TKO started doing that with the WWE. Now, anytime somebody gets thrown through a table, there's a big Slim Jim ad on the table, and it's referred to as the Slim Jim table. They're just super obnoxious with the ads in WWE. So I did see somebody post like the opening to the UFC fight where they had the big like Paramount Plus thing, and then they dropped the curtain or whatever it was, and they were like, "This is the same stuff they started doing with the WWE."
Yeah, but if you have people that are like friends that are like amateur MMA fighters, like that's actually sponsorships and ads, and like the MMA game are actually a huge part of
and that's the thing too. It's like the Octagon has always been filled with advertisements.
That's what I'm saying. The Monster logo's been. What is Monster? Monster's literally, I think, still relevant because some people like still putting. I mean, I'm not going to trash them because I used to. Sometimes I drink the 0 sugar Monsters, but like drinking a regular Monster as a grown adult is crazy to me. But I feel like a lot of their ad and sponsorship and their advertisement specifically has a lot to do with still being a huge partner with the UFC. I mean, like all the big fighters like Justin Gaethje, there's a video of someone seeing Justin Gaethje out, like filling up his gas tank at some gas station, and he's wearing like a Monster hoodie or logo. And like if you see Justin Gaethje out, he's one of the most popular UFC fighters of all time, MMA fighters of all time. And he's repping Monster like on spot. You see they have the Monster water bottles. They hold up the empty Monster cans after the fights and stuff. Like that's still a huge part of what they have going on. But I think the model for the fans of like the consumership of being able to watch the UFC is a lot more feasible now for people. And I think that will draw more attention. But I did also hate to see it go away from ESPN because at the end of the day, there's certain things that like will never go out of fashion, like the YouTubes of the world, and ESPN's one of them. And ESPN's so traditional. I mean, I still love watching ESPN's coverage of the MMA, but they just moved to Paramount, so we'll see how it goes. But what better way to start it off with one of the best fighters of all time, and Justin Gaethje getting the belt interim 155 and the most historic division arguably of all time in the UFC, the 155 lightweight division, and he gets the belt back at 37. He's the first 2-time interim champion in UFC history. So he has to fight the dude that's our age that is arguably the pound-for-pound best fighter in the entire world, and Ilia Topuria when he comes back, which is going to be extremely tough. I think I told you look like Ilia Topuria before. Haven't I told you that?
I remember you telling me I look like somebody. I guess this is the first.
In today's age, I mean, I don't really. A lot of people compare me with my long hair to a bunch of different people, and I don't like being compared to other people and looking like them. But Ilia Topuria is definitely the man, and he's a savage and knocks out all your favorite fighters. So I've been on the Ilya Taporia train since when he got dropped by Jay Herbert, and I put it on my Instagram when I was doing a lot of UFC content back in the day. But let's venture off UFC a little bit. We do have a big fight. Actually, the first pay-per-view I bought, Dante, since we were talking about it, first pay-per-view I bought, Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski, arguably my favorite fighter of all time because size-wise, I mean, he's like 5'6", 5'7", around how tall I actually am, like 5'7", and he used to be a professional rugby player, and now he's one of the top UFC fighters of all time and dropped a bunch of weight. So the comparisons to him, I love him, watching him fight. But that was the first pay-per-view. And to start the year, Dante, I don't know if you knew this being a casual UFC fan, they actually have 2 numbered events back-to-back. So this weekend is UFC 325 with another one of the greatest fighters of all time in Alexander Volkanovski, and it's a rematch versus Diego Lopez. So that should be a huge, big fight. But moving on from UFC, let's talk about the OC situation with the Philadelphia Eagles. What's going on with the Eagles and them not being able to find an OC? Another candidate went down today. Brian Dable took the Titans job. And it seems like a lot of people were talking about the topic of the guy that's coming in isn't going to have a lot of confidence because he knows he was the lower on the totem pole of what the Eagles actually wanted. And there might be a lot of criticism from the fans. I mean, we're talking about last year, fans in this area actually egged the house of the offensive coordinator. So that's obviously not a good look. But a lot of pressure comes with this job, and knowing that the Eagles probably wouldn't want to be this late into the situation and this late into their options without having it said and done. What do you think about the offensive coordinator position and that sentiment that this guy might come in feeling even more pressure, knowing that the Eagles necessarily weren't exactly looking for this guy because they already lost a couple of their top candidates?
Yeah, I'm starting to definitely get worried with the offensive coordinator search. I mean, a lot of guys are off the board now, and I'm looking at the candidates they're interviewing. It's a lot of quarterbacks, coaches, and whatnot. It doesn't really seem like they have a great selection to choose from at this point. So my worried level is definitely gone up a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's definitely justified. I mean, a lot of the top minds that we liked, it just seems like, I don't know if it was like Mike McDaniel just wanted to go to the West Coast and that was kind of like a known thing. Especially seems like a guy with his personality and the matureness, but also like the freedom and the fun-loving personality of Jim Harbaugh. I feel like that actually might be a good mesh for the Chargers. So we'll see how that goes. But they need their offensive line to get healthy with both tackles going out this year. That was huge. Was Justin Herbert holding on to the ball a little bit too long and getting absolutely murked in the pocket in the playoffs and already having a bad track history in the playoffs to begin with. But the Eagles job, it got presented on I forget what's the name of the Ocho Cinco podcast with Shannon Sharp.
I have no idea what
like the late night show or something. I forget what it's called. The midnight late night cap or something like that. And I heard a clip of Chad Ochocinco saying that he would love to, and he just laid out the weapons that the Eagles still have. And I mean, if you look at it on paper, I mean, I feel like this would be a desirable job, especially with if you want to elevate your career to the next level. The Eagles have been one of the most primetime teams, you could say, over the past 2 seasons with making the Super Bowl and getting all those primetime slots. You look at the guys that have success in Philadelphia and what they're able to parlay it into, with Shane Steichen getting a head coaching job on the offensive side, along with Kellen Moore after winning the Super Bowl, and Shane Steichen appearing in the Super Bowl and being in Philadelphia originally with Nick Sirianni, and then season 2 taking off. Also a defensive coordinator in Jonathan Gannon, who also just got another job, which was interesting. He got another defensive coordinator job in the league. But you look at what some of these guys that have coached for the Eagles in those top coordinator spots, and they produced 3 head coaches. I feel like that would just be a lore in itself, especially for a young head coach. So, but also with the youth comes the experience factor. So I know before they've done things where they might have more of a youthful and experienced guy and then bring in like a senior coordinator, kind of like how the role Vic Fangio was in on the original losing Super Bowl team a couple years ago, then left to be a DC in Miami, and then came back and ended up taking over as the job. And you saw the defense take off with that situation. Maybe that might be the scenario now where they get a senior guy to come in and be just oversee things and have a younger, youthful guy in there calling plays. But I feel like with that being said, with a guy coming in with questions about his confidence, because now the Eagles are so deep into the search where it seems like this guy isn't going to, the guy that they're going to hire isn't one of the top guys they originally thought they would get. I feel like that statement that the Eagles said with turning over the entire offense to one of these guys, how true that can that be at this point in time?
Well, I definitely think very true, because I think, like I said last week, I think they've reached a point where they realize that, and when I say they, I mean including Nick Sirianni, I think they realize that Sirianni should not be calling the plays or running the offense. So I think there's definitely a lot of truth to them stating that whichever offensive coordinator comes in gets full reign of the offense. So I mean, and to talk about what you said as well, I think when you look at okay, if you come in here, you get full reign, that's a plus. If you look at the weapons on offense, that's a plus. There's a lot of different things you can do with the offense. And if you also look at the track record of the guys that have come in and done a good job, and what that's done for them in terms of getting head coaching jobs, that's another plus. So I do think, like on paper, it does seem like a very appealing head coaching job. Philly isn't one of like the top 3 markets in the NFL, but it is a large market. I think, in my opinion, on paper, this is an appealing job. It doesn't seem like any of the big names wanted to come here. So, we'll see what else they roll with. But yeah, I'm just, as long as they don't hire from within, really, I won't be too upset. But I don't love their selections moving forward.
If we look at some of the top guys and reasons why they went elsewhere, I know we both are Jalen Hurts believers, but with all the criticism from the outside and from internally and within, do you think that some of these guys chose elsewhere to work with different quarterbacks that they may believe in more? We saw Brian Dable go to Tennessee to work with last year's #1 overall pick. We saw Mike McDaniel with the West Coast thing in warm weather. I feel like a guy in his situation would just look for any type of success coming off the situation he just came back to, even though he's coached in warm weather spots with San Fran and with Miami and Mike McDaniel, but he went to, maybe the warm weather thing was just a cover because he wanted to work with Justin Herbert more as opposed to Jalen Hurts. Like, do you buy into that sentiment at all? I'm not saying that's what is going on.
I don't necessarily buy into it. When you look at the fan perspective, people are low on Jalen Hurts, but when you look at people who actually know ball, I would say, I don't think everyone's necessarily that down on Hurts. You look at one of Jalen Hurts' biggest supporters, in the national realm, that being Tom Brady. If you have a guy like Tom Brady being a fan of yours and thinking you're a great quarterback, then that tells me anyone who truly knows the game of football.
Yeah, but I feel like Tom's also the type of guy. He doesn't really put people down. I feel like the only spat he's had with a current quarterback was with like Baker Mayfield when they were kind of going.
Yeah, but I do think Tom Brady is more so an avid Jalen Hurts supporter, and not so much so just giving him his props for the sake of it.
Well, there's such different quarterbacks, but also similar with they're all doing everything to win. But obviously, Tom Brady has a more talented arm than Jalen Hurts. I think everybody would agree with that. But Tom Brady doesn't have the most talented arm in the entire world. So just doing everything to win, that's kind of like where I feel like Tom Brady would be one of the type of guys that would respect that.
Well, yeah, and no, if you ask me why Tom Brady is such a big fan of Jalen Hurts, I would say that's exactly the reason why. I think, I've been saying it since day one, since Jalen Hurts became the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm sure I've said it before on the podcast. I think that is what makes Jalen Hurts a great quarterback. The fact that, his mentality, his drive, the fact that he's willing to win at all costs. Does he have the most talented arm? No. Does he have a very accurate arm? I would say that, but I do think the trait that makes him stand out as a quarterback and that has helped him win the Super Bowl, especially winning Super Bowl MVP, and as well as perform very well in the other Super Bowl, the one that he lost. I think it's just his mentality and his drive and his willingness to win.
Yeah, what do you think about him not utilizing one of his most important assets in running the ball? He had 40 less rushing attempts this year and actually one more game played compared to last year with 150 to 105. I think I saw one of I want to give credit to the person I saw the stat from. It was one of the women Philadelphia Eagles reporters. Might have been D. Lineham or one of the women's reporters I want to give credit to, but I think they broke it down with there was just under 100 design QB runs from the Eagles last year, and there was only in the mid 40s this year with Jalen Hurts. So I feel like I believe in him as a passer, and I just feel like they need to open up the field a little bit more. I think he does. The one thing I will say about Jalen Hurts is he kind of stays in his comfort zone of what he can do and needs to branch out a little bit. But I think a consistent offensive mind would help him in a certain scheme that he can learn for more than 1 year. But at the end of the day, the Eagles have been running a lot of the similar stuff. That's what Devontae Smith said since he's gotten there, and he's been around for the entire long haul of Jalen Hurts since he's been a starting quarterback. So I feel like they need a consistent offensive mind to help Jalen get to the next step. But also, with that being said, I think that he is not as dynamic as a passer when he's not utilizing his legs.
Yeah, well, it seems to me like there's always been a trend in the NFL where the super mobile quarterbacks, as their careers go on, they start running it less and less. For example, when Jalen Hurts first entered the league, I think, his comp was Russell Wilson in terms of what quarterback does his play style remind you of. And Russell Wilson, I think, is a huge example of that. In his early days in Seattle, especially during their Super Bowl runs, he was running it a lot. They were doing a lot of read options with him. And then if you look at his carries, after those early years, they dropped off tremendously.
One year he was the leading rusher for Seattle, deeper into his career in Seattle, but he only had
that was more so, lack of rushing yards from the running back.
That was also actually a result of an Eagles legend, Rashad Penny, not being a good first overall pick or a first round pick.
Well, he was great when he was on the field. He just couldn't stay on the field. But another example, too, is Mike Vick. I mean, in his Eagle days, he was running a lot less than in his Atlanta days. He was still running the ball very effectively as an Eagle, but he definitely was running it less and throwing it more. I'd have to look at Lamar Jackson's numbers, but I don't think he runs it as much as he used to. I think it's just a common theme, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's down a little bit. Lamar's also dealt with injuries. I mean, Jalen, we knew
and that's another thing with Jalen too. Jalen has as well,
Well, I mean, he's also playing every single game every year. So Josh Allen's out there. I hate to make the comparison because I know that sets you off, but if we're just being real, Josh Allen's out there getting beat up out there, and he's still putting his body on the line. I'm not saying
Josh Allen is also a much larger guy.
Yeah, that's true too. But that also, being a larger guy, makes him a bigger target to just when he's stood up, he just gets hit from every single angle because he's just sitting there like a gigantic target to be smacked. But one interesting stat, I'm looking at the advanced rushing stats, and from 2021 to 2024, in those 4 seasons, he had 56 rushing first downs, 67 in 2022, 68 in 2023, 62 in 2024, and 22 less than last year rushing first downs this year.
Well, I think a big contributing factor to that is, how much less effective the tush push was.
Yeah, that is true, but that doesn't make up for all those gaps because he also doesn't play the pocket on third down when he does have scrambling opportunities. But that also falls on the offensive line. I mean, like we talked about before, the offensive line isn't the greatest pass protecting offensive line, and they already were having issues with what they are good at in the run game. So, I mean, I've saw some people bring it up and mention it it didn't really cross my mind with the issues to the offensive line because I felt like a lot of them contributed to a lot of guys that they're paying top money to being injured, with Lane Johnson being injured, obviously, in the later stage of his career, but the younger guys in the interior and Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens being injured and not being as good as they were last season. But some people are trying to put a little bit of blame on Jeff Stoutland, like he's losing his flame a little bit. What do you think about that?
I don't really buy into that. How does an offensive line coach start to lose it? Unless he becomes old and senile. I mean, I don't really see how that would play out. But I do want to move on a bit because, like we mentioned last week, something we would do this week is talk about go through the list of the upcoming free agents for the Eagles and decide if these are guys the Eagles should keep or move on from, and either look to replace.
Let's agree with who I think I know who you're going to say, but
well, I got the list up here, so we'll just go one by one. But what I was going to say is, either keep or replace either through the draft, free agency, or if there's a player currently behind them in the depth chart that we feel comfortable replacing them, and that helps us feel good about moving on from them. So, so this list I have pulled up, it's whatchamacallit, it's in order of what their value is in terms of contract. So the first guy we have on the list, I think we're both in agreement with keeping this guy, and that is Dallas Goedert.
I thought the first person you were going to mention, because I think he's valued at like $22 million per year. I don't know where your list is coming from, but Jalen Phillips.
It might just go by their previous. Oh, okay, yeah, no, it's sorted by not their market value, but by their previous contract.
Because that was actually the reason why
they have Jalen Phillips. They have his market value at $17 million a year.
I saw from other publications that they're thinking he's getting over 20, which could, I mean, a guy busting into his prime. It's funny because if they didn't trade for him when he just hit the free agent market, if they had that money to spend, which I don't know if they do with Jalix Hunt, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, and both the cornerbacks needing contracts in the near future. But Jalen Phillips would like the exact type of guy that the Eagles would be going after, with a guy that's like busting into his athletic prime. May not have lived up to all the first round hype, but has the skills and skill trait. I don't know why that just absolutely murked me. But I feel like the Eagles would target a guy like this going to see his best days in Philadelphia while he's an Eagle. From his previous stop, which he was really good with the Eagles. Didn't have the exact sack numbers, but disrupting the quarterback and creating turnovers and playing against the run, especially. He had certain games. I think it was the Packers game where he really went off and was going crazy, stopping the run in that game. But I just feel like
he definitely elevated the defense.
With the way this season went, though, obviously he was needed, and he's at one of the most premier positions, so you're always going to pay a high asking price for it. But do you think that it's justified they spent a third-round pick on them? They did have a lot of picks. I think had like 14 picks in the upcoming draft. A third round.
I definitely think spending a third-round pick. I definitely think spending a third-round pick on him was justified. We do have a long list, so I don't want to get too caught.
I mean, they spent a third-round pick on Jahan Dotson, who's also another free agent too.
Well, no, that I wouldn't say that ended up working out. But like I'm saying, we do have a long list, so we can't spend too much time on any one guy. So I guess we are just starting with Jalen Phillips then, since that is the guy we're talking about. What is your verdict? Keep or move on?
I don't think they have any choice but to move on.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with you. It's definitely a guy I wish they could keep, but I mean, spending $20 million.
Also, Moro Jomo is going to make hella bread, and Milton Williams has been going off for the Patriots since he signed that gigantic contract, and might even be outplaying the contract the Patriots gave him. So that might even incline a team to like go look at Moro Jomo when he's up for a contract and give him a gigantic bag. So.
Yeah. So anyway, now we'll go back to the top of the list. Dallas Goedert. I think it's safe to say we both agree keep Goedert.
Yeah, I think they could get a little discount, but they need to up his pay. So they cut
They
him from
have his
14
market
million.
value.
They
I'm
cut him
looking
from
on
down from
Sport
14
Track, and they
million
have his
last year to
market
like 10
value at
million. So it was
$6
like a
million
$4
a
million
year.
pay cut. I feel like maybe to keep him, give him like a 2-year deal worth like $24 million or 20. But he could go. Someone might be out there ready to give him like a 2-year deal, like 28 million or 30 million, and that could be
I
the
don't
end of
think.
Dallas
I
Goedert.
mean, Sport Track has his average annual value at $6 million. So I mean, we'll see how much truth there is to that. We'll see if he gets
Nah,
somewhere
there's
around that number, if
absolutely
it's
no
more so
chance
what
he's
you're
getting paid
talking
6
about.
million.
But either way, I think keep Goddard. You don't really have anyone else at tight end.
There's
Next,
literally absolutely no chance he signs for $6 million. He just
well,
got
I'm
cut
just,
to
I'm just
pension.
going off of what it
I
says
know,
here.
but if we're talking about like the logistics of the situation, he just took a pay cut and then was what, top 5 in the league in receiving touchdowns. So why would he go down another $4 million pay cut after taking $4 million last from the year before?
It is
That?
a good point, but he is getting up there in age.
But he's still like someone's going to give him probably a nice bag for like 2 years in the last 2 years of his like true production realm of what, being 30 years old or about to turn 31 next season, I
31.
believe.
He's currently 31, so he'll be 31
I think
next.
he's also quietly a really good locker room glue guy. He's been around for the long haul. And Howie said before, the turning point of the Eagles was not holding on to those contracts of those guys and moving on when they need to. But I feel like we talked about it before. They don't have an option at tight end outside of that unless they spend a draft pick on it.
He
There's
just
always good
turned
tight end
31
options and
in
athletic guys,
January
but
3rd.
it really depends on what they want to upgrade. I feel like the offensive line might be the number one thing they need to upgrade. So I don't know if they'd spend a high premium pick.
I don't
on
necessarily think they need to upgrade the O-line. I'm not ready to move on from Cam Jurgens after one poor season. I like Tyler Steen, obviously Lane Johnson. I mean, you can look to find his replacement in the draft.
Lane Johnson's
Obviously you're
numbers
gonna keep him on the
are
roster
ticking.
next year.
Landon Dickerson.
Landon Dickerson, you're not going to move on from them in the offseason. So I don't really think they changed the offense.
It's never about like what you're doing in the when you're looking at the draft. It's always the long-term play. And when you have
that's
two
what I
guys there-
mean. The only
Yeah, but don't cut me
that's
off.
what I
Let me
mean.
talk-
The
let
only
me
thing
say
I
what I had
can
to
see
say.
them doing
The
in
interior
terms of
guys, they're
offensive
just banged up
line
with
is
injuries.
drafting Lane Johnson's replacement. But forget
I'm
all
talking about somebody
we're
different. You didn't even let me talk. You didn't even let me segue into what I was trying to say because I'm talking about the interior guys and how they're constantly getting banged up, regardless of what the resumes say. They're getting hurt all the time, and one of the most physical offenses in the NFL, which the Eagles like running the ball and running the tush push. So maybe that is actually why they're getting banged up, is because the extra wear and tear on their bodies. But then again, you always want the replacement, and Tyler Steen. It played good this season, but I don't know if anybody's ever has said that he's going to be locked in for the future of the team. And you always they always like having a sixth offensive lineman, and that was one of the weak points of their team. So getting back to establishing the run, you saw some of the other teams. Tyler Booker instantly upgraded the Cowboys offense. I think he made the Pro Bowl. So I mean, he was a good pick. Not saying I didn't like our first round pick, but this might be the year, like we talked about, how we always were sighing about, oh, we need skill position players and we don't want to see an offensive lineman drafted. But this might be the year that they actually dive back into that.
Well, to be clear, what I'm saying is I think they should draft Lane Johnson's replacement. Anyway, moving on. Next guy on the list, Reed Blankenship.
I think he'll take a hometown discount like we talked about before. Obviously, a Philadelphia favorite. Would hate to see the Exciting Mike's podcast get broken up because that's actually one of the podcasts I listen to the most out of like player podcast. I really like the guy. I mean, he was a discount what they got for him when they acquired him originally. I mean, being drafted that late, but at the end of the day, they could upgrade that position if they wanted to just look at it from a talent upgrade. I mean, there's always dynamic safeties coming into the draft. And safeties kind of, even with that, as dynamic as they are, they sometimes go late. Like, look at the kid on who was my favorite player in the draft this season. I know you're about to say, I don't remember, dude. 95% chance you're about to say, I don't remember. Yeah, Nick Castellanos from South Carolina, who was banged the absolute drum for, and now he's in the Super Bowl, and he's playing a massive, gigantic part. And Jahad Campbell played really good this season and made the All-Pro rookie team, or the All-Rookie team. But Nick Castellanos, at this point in his career, is playing better than Jahad Campbell. But Jahad Campbell was segue.
Well, we'll get to, actually, I mean, there'll be a good segue into Jahad Campbell as I move down this list. I think
To Nakobe Dean to see, because I feel like
so we'll get to Nakobe Dean in a moment, but yeah, I think we're both in agreement. Keep Reed Blankenship as well. We'll take
I
it.
can't pay Reed Blankenship. Like, we thought the CJ Gardner Johnson, like 8 for 24 deal was nice. I mean, in today's safety market for Reed Blankenship, that might be a little bit of an overpay. I feel like if we can get him for like 6-7 million, I would do it, but I can't lock in long term to Reed Blankenship and think that's going to be my opportunity, because I love him
6-7
as a player and as a person, but he definitely has limitations at times. And I feel like when we see our corners get burnt deep, a lot of it has to do with him just being not athletic enough to get back to the spot when he does misread a play.
Yeah, I think there is more good than bad with Reed Blankenship. I think
One of my
like you
favorite
said,
players
he'll
on the
take
team
a
now,
hometown. He'll
personality-wise.
take a hometown discount. I don't want to see the exciting whites get split up. So I'm in favor of keeping Reed Blankenship and rolling with Reed and Makuba next season. Next guy on the list is Aziz Ojulari. I say cut him loose. I mean, he didn't
Josh
really.
Uche did more, and I don't really care about Josh Uche either.
Yeah,
So.
no, Aziz Ojulari. I mean,
I'd rather go get
he
like
was
an
basically
experiment
nowhere
like
to be
Jalix
seen. I
Hunt.
would say get rid
I'd
of
rather
him.
get a draft experiment like Jalix Hunt and then figure out if we can do something with it. Is
Yeah.
Antoine Powell-Ryland still associated with the Eagles? Was he on like the practice squad this year or floating
I have
around?
no idea. Moving on to the next guy, Jahan Dotson. I think this is one we might be in disagreement of, depending on what your answer is.
I think untapped potential-wise, I think people still see that he has talent, and I think sometimes we see these wide receiver contracts, and they're interesting, and teams will see talent in a guy on tape, especially a former first-round pick that's still really young. I think someone out there just might outbid the Eagles and give him like close to 10 million over a multi-year deal, which the Eagles are not paying him with what they already have tied up at the receiver position. But if they can get him back for a couple years for like 5 million per, I mean, maybe 6 million max, like 2 years, like 12 million, like I'd do that, but I'm not doing anything crazy with him.
Yeah, you know what? I think I kind of agree with you because I mean, I wouldn't mind keeping him if it's a very, very team-friendly deal. But in terms of paying money to keep him, absolutely not.
That's also like, I feel like if he gets overpaid, people will start getting on Howie. Like, you're trying to just make up for the third round pick you traded for him and trying to justify it as in like giving him the contract is give him another chance. But we talked about before, I don't see any other team in the entire NFL that uses their wide receiver 3 less than the Eagles. There's literally, you will not find another team that uses their wide receiver 3.
Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't justify, giving him money.
Already with you have a lot of teams are paying wide receivers now, but you have a guy that's not happy at the current moment apparently. So
now, next guy on the list, this is more so a technicality because I mean, I doubt he, stays unretired. But if he hypothetically does stay unretired, Brandon Graham. Keep in mind he did come back to the Eagles at a vet minimum.
Something tells me that if they give him the role, like where he's able to just play like 3 to 5 like pass rushing snaps a game, he might actually want to stay around. But I feel like he's definitely not trying to go through training camp again. So maybe like he's like a late August, like September signing, or like it's like rumored that he might come back through the media. Then like he kind of ends up doing it, or maybe late into the season again. But I can't see him go through like a whole commitment of an off-season program at this age. And I feel like he's made that very clear before with the things that he said.
Yeah, if he wants to play under the vet minimum again, I definitely would not mind having him on the roster just to get, a few snaps per game and continue to be a locker room leader. So it's definitely a guy I would like to see them keep if he decides to come back. The next guy.
Well, let's ask this real quick while we're talking about it. Will Brandon Graham have any role in Philadelphia next year if he's not a player? Because I could easily see him.
I could see him. Yeah, I could definitely see him being a coach in some aspect. Definitely. I mean, he already retired, and before going an entire season, he felt the need to come back. So I think he's the kind of guy that would just want to stay in the organization. So I can agree with that. Now, the next guy, I think. They should bring him back out of necessity. And that guy is Braden Mann.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
solid.
I mean, and if you don't bring him back, you're going to end up paying a different punter the same amount, and he's been very good. So definitely should keep him. The next guy, similar to Jahan Dotson, I would say keep him if he takes a small contract, and that guy is Josh Uche.
Um, I think like they'd rather just find a more youthful option. I think the my bad. I was actually just looking up Antoine
I mean, he is
Palvardian. Apparently,
27 years old. It's not
I
like
know, but I feel like any pass rushers that has any type of production in that age realm is going to get at least a good amount of chunk of money. We're talking about one of the highest paid positions. So with where Jalix Hunt, Nolan Smith are at in their careers, like age wise, I feel like they'd be comfortable with bringing in more youthfulness via the draft and like have those guys more so getting older and holding the realm down. I mean, Nolan Smith needs a huge bounce back. Jalix Hunt is on a gigantic trajectory of being arguably one of the best defensive players on the Eagles. So I think they can feel confident in that. Maybe they do I think there's a better chance Brandon Graham, we're just talking about it, comes back and is on this roster as opposed to Josh Uche or Azeez Ojulari.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely ready.
I don't think there's any chance of Azeez Ojulari. Josh Uche maybe, but he would have to take a huge discount.
My verdict on Uche is if we can bring him back cheap, I say bring him back. The next guy I say move on from. He's 30 years old. I think his performance in the second half of the season was more so a flash in the pan, in my opinion. And we're not going to, and especially at his age, at the position he plays, I don't think we're going to see that again next season. So I say we move on from Adoree Jackson.
Yeah, I think he might actually get a job elsewhere. He still probably has another year or two left, and he really came on strong. You fit him in with the defense. You're not going to ask him to be out there covering number one receivers, but as a second, third, or a depth corner, I think he might get a job. But his days probably in Philadelphia. That's another position where I think we talked about before when we started mentioning how like secondary in general could be upgraded. I think you talked about corner. I talked about safety a little bit. I think secondary, along with offensive line, will be up top their list probably in the draft this upcoming season.
Yeah. Now the next guy, I think with a lot of these guys coming up, I mean, I'm looking at the rest of the names. A lot of these guys are our same thing. You can keep him at a small deal, do it. If not, get rid of them. Or there are guys that I just say get rid of, looking at the rest of the list. This guy more so, if you can keep him at a small deal, keep him. But also, I can't see him getting a deal elsewhere. So that probably is the likelihood. And that is the third tight end on the depth chart, Kylan Granson.
Yeah, I don't really – I wouldn't be stressing over him. That could easily be another Grant Calcaterra type draft pick later with the tight ends, especially with there's talent. Or maybe they do a surprise thing and add a talented tight end and then have a 2 tight end set, go a little bit more with that, change the offense up a little bit, have more success. Dallas Goedert rides out the last couple of years of his career like the Zach Ertz relationship, and they move forward that way. I think tight end could also be another position they look at some point and have atop their list to upgrade. But I want Dallas Goedert back. But Kylan Granson, I don't really know if it's a topic to discuss. We'll just have to see. But there's going to be no stress. I mean, they backup tight end. They've shown Harrison Bryant was on the team for how long? Got traded right before the season started after he just signed. So
I forgot all about that. Wow. Next guy on the list, I say get rid of him. He stinks. I want him gone. Matt Pryor.
Yeah, that's another,
Yeah, so we're in agreement there. The following guy on the list after that, I say definitely keep, especially with how much Lane Johnson has been getting hurt as of late. Even if you do end up drafting his replacement in the draft, I would like to see this guy stay on board. I think he's a great depth piece on the offensive line, a phenomenal depth piece on the offensive line, that being Fred Johnson.
I think they'll get outbid, but on him as well. We saw Isaac Seumalo get poached off their offensive line. We saw Halapuli.
I got one. If I see his name spelled out again, I can remember.
Remember when he got $10 million and left. So I feel like a lot of
Yeah,
people
but
like
that
to
was
see when
after a
Eagles drop off
Super
the line.
Bowl run. I don't see the same thing happening with Fred Johnson. I mean, he was serving as our backup tackle last year when we won
He
the
got a
Super
lot of
Bowl.
playing time this year and played pretty decent in his playing time. A lot of people were
Yeah, but
watching this week.
I don't nah, I don't see him getting a big contract elsewhere. Halapua Halapulavadi.
Alapuli Vaitai, that's what it is.
Halapulavadi. That's how you say it. God, I haven't had to say that in
I think
years.
Fred Johnson
Halapulavadi.
guaranteed gets a contract elsewhere, probably at least worth $8 million, maybe on a year or two deal, probably 16 million, something like that. I think he guaranteed leaves with the production he put on tape for the rest of the league this year.
Well, next guy, I can confidently say we're both in agreement to move on from, and I would say all Eagles fans would agree because he did nothing. There were many times throughout the year you forgot he was even on the team. That's AJ Dillon.
Yeah, we talked about, like, are they even going to invest in running back? Because Saquon was coming off that a lot of touches in the historic season that he had during the Super Bowl run. We were talking about how they're going to manage the second running back position. Tank Bigsby obviously is a beast that the Eagles would like to keep around. I think he's under contract for like one more year for pretty cheap. Will Shipley, they have a draft pick invested in and plays special teams and is like a glue guy for the locker room, as in like doing all the dirty work. So AJ Dillon, we never saw the best of him. He's just a classic example of a running back just phasing out of what they used to be early on in their career, like at like an age that's even younger than us. That the number one position that you say
Don't
ages
say
in the NFL is probably running back.
Don't say that to me. Don't even fucking bring that up. All right, next guy, I think definitely more of a conversation. And I said, Jahad Campbell would be brought up again when I mentioned this guy because I think he's phenomenal. I think he's gonna warrant a bigger contract, not a massive contract, but a bigger contract.
I think you need to hold
But
your
I
brakes
do
on him a little
think
bit.
Jahad Campbell is a very suitable replacement for him. That guy being the Kobe Dean.
Yeah, I think you need to pump your tracks. I remember a couple of weeks ago you were trying to tell me that he could mark Christian McCaffrey in coverage one-on-one, and we kind of saw how that played out in the game, and it was pretty apparent in that. So I don't know where you were getting that information from.
All right.
I think you kind of play him out to be a lot more athletic than he is, even though he is pretty athletic, but you think he's a lot faster than he is, which he's not as fast as you make him out to be. Jahad Campbell, they spent a first-round pick on. So Nakobe Dean's somebody that I've been beating the drum for since he's gotten drafted. And I love him as a player, especially with the Georgia connections. I think he's still a leader for that locker room. So I think they'll do a lot of everything that they can to keep him. But I think his intangibles of what he brings as a leader is going to entice somebody to give him a pretty nice contract in free agency. And I think the Eagles will just unfortunately be outbid. And I think this comes back to this kind of full circles the thing, like Eagles love linebackers and we draft the first round pick, and then we're back to, do they love linebackers, letting go of one of our fan favorite players in the Kobe Dean. But I think it's just necessary. I mean, you got to think of it too. You got to think about the other guys that are on the roster that are peaking. You can't mess up being able to sign Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell. And then at the top of the totem pole, Jalix Hunt, and not being able to re-sign those guys as giving one of these other guys a contract. I just don't think that would be smart business for the Eagles, especially drafting. Like if they wouldn't have drafted Jahad Campbell in the first round, I think this is a different conversation with him being a first round pick. I think it would be kind of foolish if they give a gigantic contract out to a linebacker after they just gave one to Zach Bond in free agency as well. You can't have all these positions having tied up money like that. You can't be paying Saquon top flight, offensive line top flight, wide receivers top flight, quarterback top flight.
Well, hold on,
expect to have all these guys on the roster.
What I'm saying about Nakobe Dean is, although I really like the guy and I think he's phenomenal in defense, he does have some injury history, and we do have a very suitable replacement in the waiting in Jahad Campbell, who we spent a first round pick on. So unfortunately, I do say move on from Nakobe Dean. But he's not an easy guy to move on from, in my opinion.
I think it's true. I'm not trying to bash him. I think I'm just trying to be real with the situation. But the fan in me as an Eagles fan, I would love to see him back on the roster. And I think they could actually implement a more linebacker and traditional based look of just having 3 linebackers out there, because that's how athletic those guys are. And then you have the versatility of Cooper DeJean playing around the box too in the slot. I think that'd be interesting to see them play a lot of that. But I think, what was it? Vic Fangio said the Super Bowl year. Remember, he said I think they played like a base alignment 160 times or something. So I don't know what the numbers look like last year, but with their personnel, I don't know if that changes what Vic Fangio is doing or not. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just think Nakobe Dean's just going to be a guy that is probably going to get a contract elsewhere, and it's going to be pretty sad to see. But they can't jeopardize paying not being able to pay these other guys that are coming up in the future.
Yeah. So now the next guy, it's probably not even worth mentioning. I don't even know how to say his
Ogabania,
name, really.
Okawanranku. That's not even close.
Ogbo Oka
Ogbania.
Okoronkwo. I don't know. I forgot he existed. Move on from him. Who cares?
Yeah. Marcus Epps, we got down the line here. I mean, he didn't look good in the playoffs, honestly. I think the first play he got really burnt on.
Well, he never looked good in the past. It was shocking to see him play as well as he did going into the playoffs.
Well, I didn't think he was a bad player. I just think
he doesn't have a good resume as an Eagle. I'm
not going to trash him. I think he's been a solid player in his Philadelphia career. But he's not a needle mover by any means. He's not somebody that you lock in long term. And I think a lot of the reason why he came back to the Eagles was his familiarity with the Eagles originally. And I just don't really think it's justified at this point to bring him back. We have another offensive lineman, Brett Toth. I don't think that's, atop their totem pole to bring Brett Toth back.
Yeah, but I do like him as a depth piece. I would give him.
They do like bringing backups at cheap prices that they can get them back.
Yeah, I would be down to.
I was actually going to mention later, like before, with the offensive line issues, maybe they have a solution from within, because there's a couple guys on the offensive line like Miles Hinton.
I forgot he existed.
Drew Kendall in the interior offensive line, somebody I was big on. And then they had that other tackle. I forget his name.
That is a good point.
So they have a couple options there. So I feel like, I don't know if I think they'd still draft a top tier first round pick guy, but as in depth wise, they might let these guys grow into the Cameron Williams looked pretty good, and he's only 21 years old and he's gigantic. So they have 3 guys that look pretty good.
No, you bring up good points. The next guy, I think it depends on the offensive coordinator they hire. It depends on, if that new offensive
I know who you're going to talk about. I wanted to segue onto this guy from the linebacker talk, because this is actually a utility multi-purpose kind of guy. But this is also a dude that came back from injury and got injured on the opening kickoff of his first game back and played 12 seconds total with another major injury. So as much as I love Ben Van Zumeren, I think with these injuries, I don't know if they can give him another contract.
Yeah, but at a cheap contract, if you use him at fullback, and if the offensive coordinator,
who knows if he's going to be ready? I think his last injury was like a massive knee injury, I think.
That's a good point. So yeah, they might cut him. If they do cut him, I do wonder if they bring in another fullback or not, or just move on from that position.
All right, that's pretty much that. Britton Covey was the last guy. I mean,
I'm looking at 2 more names. I think they're very quick answers. I think the first guy is an easy no, and the second guy is an easy yes, because it's not going to cost much to keep him. The first guy being an easy no is Sam Howell.
I mean, they're a quarterback factory, so.
Well, I mean, you have a good backup currently in Tanner McKee. After that, you have a guy who didn't look good in the preseason, but it was his first preseason. I think I do have confidence in him, and we're only talking.
He's gone. I don't know if you saw that. He's gone weeks ago, brother. He's got signed.
He is. What happened?
I forgot where he signed. He's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
Oh, that's a shame. All right, I say keep Sam Howell then. Never mind.
He's an experienced quarterback with starting quarterback play. I would take any experienced starting quarterback play that's young on a cheap contract as my third quarterback option. I would take that every single day of the week.
How the hell did Kyle McCord get signed to a roster already? That's insane.
The futures contracts. The Eagles just signed some futures contracts to some guys too.
Yeah, but it's Kyle McCord. It's not. I don't know. Anyway, final guy on the
Linebacker,
list.
too. We didn't even mention a guy that I feel like we were both kind of high on that was a back-end guy. Hopefully he's not a Keeley Ringo. He definitely doesn't have the pressure, but he's also a Georgia guy. Smile Munden. I mean, he's going to be on the roster, but he could step up and be somebody that's an athletic guy that could take on a bigger role that could fill
That's
the
a good
void of
point.
losing to Kobe Dean.
All right, so last guy is Grant Calcaterra. I say keep him on a cheap deal. I think you would agree. Now, that took a lot longer than anticipated.
Real quickly, though, I wanted to segue off this off the top of your head. We don't have to go too in depth about it. Who are some guys that their contract isn't up, but not might be on the team? Obviously, the elephant in the room, a lot of people would think we're mentioning A.J. Brown, but we both feel strongly that they should keep him, even though they can save a tiny bit on his contract, but it's not worth it at the end. But Jake Elliott, will he be on the roster?
I vote send him packing. That's what I vote. I think I just don't think he has it anymore. I don't know if the Eagles actually do that, but I vote to move on from Jake Elliott.
What about Keeley Ringo dropping Jake Elliott, or Keeley Ringo picking up Jake Elliott to drop them both off at the airport? How's that sound?
I would get in the car right freaking now. But as I was gonna say, we do still have the meatball of the week, and we were gonna talk Sixers and Phillies.
I found a sleeper we had to bring up though, because this is actually, I don't know if anybody's even mentioning this. This is actually very interesting. Michael Carter, they traded for, was vastly used, or like very wasn't used as often as expected. They traded a draft pick for him, and I just looked at it. I remember he got the extension for 10 million per, 30 million in total. I don't know if the Eagles are paying all that. I'd have to figure out the exact thing, but the contract value is 10 million per year. I mean, he got 13 at signing, so 17 over the next 2 years, maybe. So like 8 million, maybe, or if the Jets are paying some. But that's something to look into. Like, can they justify paying Michael Carter money if they are paying a lot of that contract for him? I mean, I don't really. They used him at safety a lot too, but maybe that might be something they could do. But
I would not hold on to Michael Carter. Anyway, in terms of talking Sixers and Phillies for the rest of the podcast, I mean, we're already an hour in. We're going to have to make a decision on the fly here. I would say either cut one of them out or come back later in the week for
let's just we don't have to waste time talking about it. We just get into it.
Well, but before we do that, it is, however, my time for my meatball of the week. And my meatball of the week, this guy doesn't usually pertain to sports, but he did this past weekend. Adam W22, if that's what his name is. Anyway, the guy whose wife, Lena the Plug, who, she did that whole thing with Jason Love. And then Adam 22 decided to face off against Jason Love in a boxing match. I don't really know what's going on, but Adam got his ass beat by Jason Love. So not only does your wife, I'm trying to think of a good word to use here. Word that they used for Jada Pinkett Smith. I don't know. But Lena the Plug, not only did she get involved with Jason Love, and then Jason Love beat your ass in front of thousands of people, maybe. I don't know how many people actually watched that stream. But it's a bad look for Adam. Adam, you're my meatball of the week.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to any fighting of any nonsense, stupid stuff like that. So I don't really even, haven't checked up on the topic that you're even discussing, really. One last thing about the Eagles, though. We mentioned it last time.
Entangle! That's the word I was looking for. She entangled with Jason Love. All right, anyway, go back to what you were saying.
Yeah, I was wondering what the Jada Pinkett Smith reference was from. But the Eagles did lose Christian Parker to the Cowboys as their DC job. So, and I think they just interviewed the Eagles The Eagles tried to interview somebody from the Cowboys. I think it was their linebacker coach or something, and they got blocked the interview by the Cowboys. And then the Eagles allowed Christian Parker. I mean, I think at this point they weren't going to block Christian Parker in any demand. He ended up getting the defensive coordinator job, which we talked about was a possibility. So the Eagles got poached by the Cowboys and then got blocked. A lot of those coordinator or coaching things, a lot of the Eagles are known to like bring in guys just to like see how their offense looks from a different perspective and maybe gain information on other teams of guys that are still active coaches. So I guess the Cowboys were kind of fearful of that, but the Cowboys aren't even of concern for the Eagles at the moment, even though the Eagles got to get back on track. Sixers. The Sixers are 3-6 in their last 9 games. They're actually 9.5 games back. The last time we were on the podcast, when I was updating the ticker at the bottom, they were the 5th in the East, so they dropped to the 6th in the East, and that's what happens when you lose 6 out of the last 9 games, especially with a nasty front leg of the back-to-back that will end tonight with Paul George and Joel Embiid hopefully back in the lineup. I think Paul George is listed as probable. Joel Embiid is listed as questionable.
The Sixers are, I mean, as of this morning, when I checked the line this morning, the Sixers are minus 10.5 point favorites for tonight's game.
Well, that's also because you don't really, not to flame you, but you don't watch the rest of the league. Giannis is not playing. Giannis is injured.
Well, yeah, I wasn't implying he is playing. I'm just saying.
Well, if you know what the Bucks roster looks like without Giannis,
at if they're going to win this game or not, I'm saying they're currently minus 10.5 points.
I think they would be a big favorite with the threat of Kyle Kuzma, Miles Turner, Kevin Porter Jr. As their biggest threat laying in their way with that roster. But hey, we'll see. We talked about Giannis being a trade target, and I actually saw ESPN articles of the Sixers being one of the 10 teams that have a package to offer. The only issue is they have talent to offer, but unless they trade Paul George, they don't have contracts to offer to match. So, I mean, I'm not even trying to push that like that's like a thing, but it's not just me trying to put that out there that that's a possibility. But for the Sixers' sake, there's a lot of these games where they're back-to-backs and they just, they don't have Paul George or Joel Embiid. They usually sit them for the front ends and they play the back end, or depending on the team and the matchup. I mean, the Hornets have Dante. Have you ever seen a team have 4 different guys averaging exactly 19 points on one roster?
No,
that's the current situation with the Charlotte Hornets.
I've seen similar stuff with, the Pistons back in the day and the Spurs, but I don't think 4 guys averaging 19. I don't think I've ever seen that.
It's funny because LaMelo averages I think the last time I checked it was 19.9, but they have 4 different guys averaging 19 points in different varieties, different point decimals to them, but it's actually crazy.
Yeah,
but
that is.
They have a good roster now. I mean, when you accumulate lottery picks every single year, you have to be good at some point. And we talked about Con Knippel being in the realm for the Sixers' 3rd overall pick, and I love VJ Edgecombe. I wouldn't want to trade him. That was also another thing. The Sixers would have to part with VJ in a Giannis trade. I'm not doing that. That's just the days of the Kevin Durant, Tyrese Maxey trade where, I mean, Giannis and Kevin Durant are all-time players in the NBA history, but Tyrese Maxey is the 3rd leading scorer after they didn't do that trade a couple years ago. So I would say that they benefited.
One thing I do want to bring up while we're talking about Tyrese Maxey, because I have said it previously on this podcast. I said I want VJ Edgecombe to be the guy with the ball in his hands late in the game. It may sound absurd considering the fact that you have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey on the roster. But one thing I did say is Embiid and Maxey don't have a great track record with the ball in their hands at the end. Just with the I'm struggling to find the word.
I know. I think the issue is
wait, hold on. But let me finish what I'm trying to say. You can look at the Tyrese Maxey shot against the playoffs, in the playoffs against the Knicks, and you can look at the Joel Embiid shot in the playoffs against, I think it was the Raptors that one year. But outside of those 2 specific shots, Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid both do not have a good track record with the ball in their hands at the very end. And we saw it yet again, not the most recent game, the game before that against, I believe it was the Knicks, if I'm remembering correctly, final possession, Sixers miraculously are even in a position to tie the game with a three. They give it to Maxey, and with 6 seconds left on the game clock, he hoists up just one of the worst shots I've ever seen, and the Sixers going to lose the game. I love Tyrese Maxey so much. He's a phenomenal player, but at this point, I've seen enough. I don't trust Maxey or Embiid with the ball in their hands at the end of the game. But one guy I'm starting to really trust is VJ Edgecombe. It might sound insane. It might just sound like I'm really hopping on the bandwagon with how good he looks as a rookie. But I think my thoughts and feelings are absolutely justified based on what we've seen on the court throughout the years and what we've seen out of Edgecombe this season.
I think the issue is that Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey try to do too much in those situations and be like the primary ball handler and create the opportunity in the shot for themselves as opposed to using all the options on the floor. And at this point in time, the Sixers have enough useful options on the offensive end. I mean, Kelly Oubre's been balling since he came back from injury. I mean, he's one of their leading scorers. I see him on the betting markets. Like 20-plus points is like barely a favorite line for him nowadays, and that's just the type of player he is. And we talked about the impact of him coming back from injury. But I think VJ makes good decisions. I think Paul George should be another guy that should have the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I would probably trust PG over Max.
Paul George, all time wise, might have one of the biggest like one-on-one bags of any of players in the history of NBA. I mean, dude, when he goes one-on-one in an ISO situation with his size and his dribbling ability for his size, I mean, he's like a T-Mac clone in a way that he's just able to get to spots. So I'd love to see him. And he also passes the ball out. And I remember a couple years ago in the playoffs when they were missing Kawhi, Paul George was actually going off in the playoffs, but it just wasn't enough for the team. But I think Joel always like I don't want Joel like dribbling into a late game scenario unless he has a full complete ISO and a big man. And I think Tyrese kind of forces the issue in those situations. That was the exact prime example was that shot that you just mentioned there. I thought actually when you brought those shots up, like those references of those shots, like the playoff shot for Joel versus the Raptors, I thought you were going to mention how he's better in situations where someone creates the situation for him as the shooter, as in he caught a catch and shoot situation, as opposed to him just catching the ball in an ISO and dribbling out and then trying to take somebody one-on-one at the end of the shot clock, or at the end of the buzzer. So we'll see how they navigate that. I mean, Kelly Oubre is fully capable of making an open catch and three to win a game. I mean, we won a playoff game a couple of years ago. I know the roster was entirely different, but in the Joel Embiid era, they won a playoff game versus the Brooklyn Nets with a game-winning Mike Scott shot in the playoffs as a corner three. So it's not always the
Bellinelli once hit a very crazy three to
Marco Bellinelli. Remember the Marco Bellinelli shot from a couple of years ago?
I mean, it was much more than a couple of years ago now. But yeah, I believe it was a game they actually lost in the playoffs against the Celtics. But he did hit an insane shot to send it to overtime, if I am remembering history correctly.
But yeah, trade deadline wise, I mean, they can't really do anything unless they move Paul George. At this point, it would kind of just look stupid for everything that's happened with Paul George unless you get like a crazy Giannis trade or whatever to trade him when he's playing like he's like benefiting the team the most.
I think Paul George is playing. I think Paul George is playing very well. I don't think he's playing well enough to warrant a max contract. I
don't even want to mention it, but the worst case scenario, I mean, if he does end up getting injured, which he has a history of doing, but if he does end up getting injured, I mean, it's just more playing time for the youthful guys on the roster. So that might help them in the long run.
Yeah, but I do really like his defense and his shot creation as well.
I think if they can get Tyrese is never going to be an elite defender, but if they can get Paul George, VJ and Joel all playing stellar defense come playoff time, that's going to be hard. 3 out of the 5 guys in their lineup, especially a rim protector and 2 perimeter guys that can play on ball to ball handlers. I think that could be an issue for teams that are trying to play half court offense versus the Sixers in the playoffs. But like I said, if Paul George goes down, as much as I like this roster and how deep they are with talent on the perimeter and having Joel Embiid as the anchor in the middle, they're not going to go too far with Paul George. The other way, when they were playing, I think it was a Cleveland game. I forget which game it exactly was. I tweeted that this version of Paul George and Joel Embiid playing like this could actually take the Sixers pretty far with what the rest of the league looks like right now. But you said it last podcast, and it's gotten worse since then. They need to start capitalizing and actually winning these games with the talent that they have on their team.
Yeah, and I still do think that eventually they will. just on paper that it's just such a good roster, and they do play very well together at times. So I do think the wins will start to fall into place. It's
And I
just
love Andre Drummond as I love Andre Drummond as a backup big and being a traditional big and being a rebounder. But versus teams like the Hornets, he's not as effective because they're just like such a athletic, youthful lineup. I feel like he just has issues just really being an impact in that game. And you kind of saw it where without Joel and then without Paul on top of it, I mean, they got absolutely floored.
Yeah, but I don't know about you, but at this point, I'm saying either let's save the Phillies talk.
Let's just talk about it real quick. I mean, there's not too much to talk about.
We can brush through it.
Training
We're now
coming
like
up.
10 in, but I got stuff to do, but we can brush through it.
I mean, there's spring training, couple in less than a month. There's not really too much to talk about. I mean,
there were a few things I wanted to talk about in depthly. So, I mean, I guess for those things we can save for next week. I did want to talk about what the rotation is going to look like next season. I did want to talk about what this team's expectations are for next season.
I think the cap of the rotation.
Those are things we can talk about next week. I think the one topic to really quickly brush on is something that developed quite recently. We can talk about them losing Harrison Bader to free agency.
I don't think that. I mean, I think he was like a fan favorite for the couple months he was here. I don't really think too many people put too much stock in him returning. I mean, they have to get these prospects up to the league, and you can't just keep signing guys to big contracts. They're about to do it again to the infield and then have to figure out one of the guys to move and then delay Aiden Miller coming up to the bigs for how much even longer. So, I mean, no one else is operating in a league like this besides the Dodgers, who went out and spent more money on the outfield when they had a guy like Andy Pages last year that was pretty productive out there. And I think he was an all-star too. So, I mean, the pitching rotation, I don't really know how big of a conversation that is. They got to figure out Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler with the blood clot situation. Hopefully he comes back, because if he's not back, their rotation is nowhere near where it needs to be. But Taijuan Walker is going to probably be in and out like a replacement utility guy. They just lost Rangers, so we know that. Jesus Luzardo is going to be on the team again, so we'll see how they combat losing a lefty in their pitching rotation. But like I said, with the guys and the prospects coming up to the bigs, they need that to happen. And Andrew Painter needs to come up to the bigs, and so does Justin Crawford. And then at some point, Aiden Miller has to follow. But Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter both have to be on this opening day roster.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing to look at, right? It's when you look at the opening day pitchers available, Zach Wheeler most likely isn't going to be one. He could be, but I'm
not even concerned about they're always so hot and cold anyway. So it's as long as Zach Wheeler's peaking and healthy, the last 2 months of the season, I'll take that. And that might be the time.
Well, yeah, but
that might be the way they play it out.
Yeah, but you're jumping onto a different subject now. What I was about to talk about is the opening day pitchers that they would have available, because I think it is interesting how it'll shake out, right? You have the two guys who I think you're confident with, Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo. You have a guy who's a bit of a question mark if he's going to be in the opening day rotation. That's Andrew Painter. You have Taijuan Walker, who, I mean, with Wheeler on the shelf, I think Taijuan Walker, and with how good he looked as a starting pitcher last year, far and away better than he did the previous 2 years. I think Taijuan Walker could possibly be part of the starting rotation to start the season. So, with Wheeler not being available to start the season and Ranger Suarez gone, I think it definitely is interesting to see what your 5 starting pitchers will be to start the year.
I think Christopher Sanchez might just get the opening day nod just in general.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a given. I mean, he
also was somebody.
Oh, and then Aaron Nola is the other guy I forgot to mention. But yeah, I think Christopher Sanchez is without question the best pitcher on this roster to start the season. I don't even think it's really a debate.
Yeah, well, it depends on the health of what we get Zach Wheeler back, because Christopher Sanchez.
I'm talking about the start of the league
right now. Zach Wheeler is one of the best pitchers of all time. So
we'll see. Yeah, but I'm talking about the start of the year. I'm talking about the start of the year.
So. I feel great about finally seeing a full season of Jose Alvarado and Johan Duran. I feel
that I'm
amazing
excited
about
for,
that.
man. That I'm excited for.
What's his name just got signed? I forget where, but I saw people like Phillies fans in the comments saying it was a bad signing. But Sir Anthony Dominguez just got a 2-year deal. I think did he go inside the NL East?
Where did he go? I don't know. I didn't even notice him getting signed anywhere.
He just
No, it says he's currently a free agent.
no, he signed a
No, and
2-year
then
deal with
one
the
day ago,
White
White
Sox.
Sox. Yeah, White Sox signed Sir Anthony.
That seems like one of those deals he signs, and then he'll be traded right around the trade deadline to a impactful team on that contract. So 2 years, $20 million. I wouldn't even have been opposed to bringing him back just because he has familiarity. I don't think he's the worst pitcher in the world. And I think with the base that they have, with having two of the best bullpen pitchers in the entire league to fall back on, I mean, they just need to implement better pitching, but they can't. They need to take guys out that were just flaring out that just weren't a part, like the Matt Stroms of the world, which they obviously did with moving on from him. But what do you think about the infield as a whole? Like everything, like Bryce, you think he's locked into first base for? I mean, is that a reason why they're not adding to the outfield too? Because they see versatility. Is Kyle Schwarber going to play DH for the entirety of this 5-year contract, or is he going to get assigned a position? Like, what do you think about some of their
no, I
things?
wouldn't. With how slow he was in the outfield and how he's getting older, I wouldn't put him in the outfield. I would leave him at DH.
Well, what about Bryce Harper at first base? Because that either opens up, that gives you more options for the outfield. I mean, this is kind of
I would keep Harper at first. I mean,
Adolis Garcia is going to have to hit 20 plus home runs and bat over like 260 for him to maybe get another contract from the Phillies. But this could just be a Band-Aid, and they still don't have the exact.
I definitely view this I definitely view Adolis Garcia as a Band-Aid for right field. By the way, Nick Castellanos is still on the roster. You know what? Before we end this podcast, let's do kind of the opposite what we did with the Sixers throughout their offseason, where each week we checked in to see, is Quentin Grimes re-signed yet? Let's do that with the Phillies now. Is Nick Castellanos cut loose yet? So we'll start that this week.
We'll see.
No, he is not.
Well, I told you the situation of the reports that like they're gonna have to eat 18 to 19 million to move the 20 million in total contract. So like the thing is with Nick is he wants to play with 162 and he gets angry when he doesn't do that. So how's he gonna feel if he's not in another role? But then again, as a fan and as somebody looking at it as an analyzation perspective, I would want him back on the roster if they don't have better options in the outfield, because right now we're already talking about their outfield. We have a Band-Aid with Garcia. We don't know the future with that, and he's at an age where you're not going to commit to him long term. Brandon Marsh already has question marks himself, and that's like what, the most tenured veteran outfielder that you would have. And then you expect Justin Crawford, who I have full belief in, but you have to also trust that the Phillies themselves will bring him up after being the last team in the MLB to bring a prospect up to the MLB roster last season. So they don't have any answers. They don't have bookends in the outfield, and they're kind of stretching it along. Are they kicking the can down the street with the outfield?
So, I mean, we still got to see how things shake out. Are they going to call up Crawford? Are they going to cut Castellanos loose? Is Johan Rojas going to stay in AAA?
What would you set the betting line on as opposed to who would be on the roster for longer with their contract situations? Taijuan Walker or Nick Castellanos?
Taijuan Walker. It's crazy to say at this point. If you would have asked me a year ago today, I would have undoubtedly said Nick Castellanos. But at this point, I'm going Taijuan Walker.
What if they use what if the Castellanos stays on the roster and is like split between DH and outfield and plays like?
Well, but you bring up that good point. Is he willing to accept that role? If Nick Castellanos is willing to stick around and be a guy who, is a platoon guy on the roster, and you can't really find another way to get rid of his contract, you're going to have to pay him anyway. And he's like, yeah, I'll platoon it. Then I wouldn't hate keeping him around, but I I don't know if he'll want a platoon. So
I could see like a low end team like the Pirates going out and like putting them in the top of the order, just because that would be a team to be happy to have any type of offense. But at the end of the day, like you're going to eat a bunch of money to do that. I feel like with how these other teams are built, I mean, the Phillies, I think, still have the second highest odds to win the National League, even though the Dodgers are like plus 125. But at the end of the day, all these assets and pieces, I don't know, like the situation of just getting him out of town. I guess he has a little bit of verbal spats this past season with Rob Thompson, but on the field wise, if we're looking about the amount of talent that it could accumulate on this roster, they're definitely not going to be a better team moving on from Nick Castellanos as opposed to what they're going to get back in return. But thank you guys for tuning in to episode 128 of the Paisan Sports podcast. We'll be on Nick Castellanos roster watch from this point on until spring training. We got, I mean, how many watches we're going to have? We also have the Eagles offensive coordinator search going on, and we'll see. We'll be on watch for what Sixers are going to be. Even if the Sixers don't have a lot to do, I mean, I feel like we pass NBA trade deadlines where almost every single team at least makes one minor trade around this point in time, moving forward to I think like February, like mid-February is usually like the 10th or 12th or somewhere around there is the deadline. So, but I feel like even minor deals go on. And some deals that we don't think are even going to matter, like a Caleb Martin for Quentin Grimes deal that turns out to be a beaut. You know what I mean? So we'll be on watch for that. The deadline's actually February 5th this year.
Oh, so, wow. It is quickly approaching. Wow,
so we got like about a week. So we're actually going to see
we're probably, I mean, before the next podcast, even if it's not the Sixers, I mean, throughout the league, we're probably going to have some significant trades, so that will be interesting.
It's crazy because like Jared McCain could easily be off the roster if he had like a contract that matched. Like they could get a veteran, but they can't. So he might just stay on the roster being a contract wise that way. I don't want to get rid of him, but I think they could upgrade the roster using him as an asset to get rid of it. But we'll see. But thank you guys for tuning in to episode 120 of the Paisan Sports podcast, and we'll be back next week.